Hello, my name is Devin Rhodes, and this is my video for my project diagnostic games for Project and Portfolio 4. So right here is Tic Tac Toe, and we can see that player 1 is going first, hence the circle right over here. So we'll start this out, and I will show off this. So right, we can see player 1 winning right there, and this time I will set up a tie. There we go, and then that's showing off a tie right there. And pretty much everything for Tic Tac Toe I have built into the UI as just images. So here's the board right here. Here's all my O's, my X's, all the invisible buttons that's on each quadrant, and all the different objects for player 1 and player 2. We'll hop over to the scripts real quick. So this didn't take too many scripts, so pretty much we just have this button on each of those different quadrants, and when you click it calls this function right here called button press, and pretty much it's checking either if the left your turn is true or the right your turn is true, and if the left is true it drops the X, swaps over to the right, and then starts the coroutine to allow right to interact with the game. And then vice versa for the right, it sends it back over to the left and then starts the coroutine that gets it ready to go again. And then over here we have the win states. So pretty much I just went through and thought of all the different like quadrant combinations that could lead to a win for X, and we have that all right here. So it's if X2, X5, X8 is true, then the player wins that way, and then I have all those written out for the O's as well. And then down here we have it checking for ties. So pretty much I have an array of checking the game objects with the tag X or O, and then it's constantly counting the amount on screen, and if the amount on screen gets to be 9 and the player still hasn't won yet because player win hasn't been set to true, then we know it's a tie, and it sends right over to that. And pretty much that's everything that I have for Tic Tac Toe, so we will move on over to Space Invaders. Space Invaders is a little more complex, so I probably won't show that off for as long, but I'll play for a little bit to kind of show you. So I have it set up that each of the enemies have a specific buddy, which is the guy right beneath them, and the enemies can only shoot once their buddy is dead. And then the enemy bullets also deal damage on the barriers, and each barrier has a certain amount of health, and I just have a script checking the health, and then when it gets down to a certain point it turns off the one sprite and turns on the damage sprite. So we'll move over into the scripts for this. So we'll start with the barrier right here. So you can see I just have like the different barrier game objects. We have them right in here. And once it gets between this health and this health, it sets off the first one, turns on the second one, and so on. And then here's the function that the enemy bullet is calling when it's damaging the barrier itself. Moving on, we'll touch on score a little bit later, but pretty much all we have right here is just a function that's saying the text in the UI equals to what we declare in the score, and then it's just adding that to what I already have. Over here we have the player move, which is just very simple. A, transform.translate to the left. D, transform.translate to the right. Input.get button jump, which is the spacebar, and my time is greater than next fire, and I pretty much just have a little timer set up right here so that fire rate goes correctly, so it works nice with a loop and allows you to hold down the button. So pretty much it's just checking the time, instantiating the bullet, and then setting the time back to 0 so that it can loop again. We'll skip enemy bullet because player bullet's the exact same. Here we have enemy health, which is nothing too crazy because it takes 1 bullet to kill them, but we also handle the shooting in here as well. So pretty much I have a timer start, and then when shot time is greater than 100, it checks to make sure the dude below is false. it generates a random number between 1 and 10. If that number is greater than or equal to 8, it instantiates the bullet, sets shot time back to 0, whether it instantiates or not. So it kind of goes in this constant loop where it's random if they're going to shoot or not. Here is the function that is called when the bullet hits the enemy. Pretty much we're just taking damage right there, and then when health is less than 0, score.score equals score.score plus score amount, and I put in the int score amount because each enemy has a specific amount of score they give, and I went back to the original arcade game to check that, so each enemy should be giving the correct score for who they are. So pretty much it's setting that, and then it's calling that update score function, and setting the dead to true, and then it starts the coroutine, which sets the, or I guess dead is actually the little explosion. So it sets that to true, turns the original sprite off, and then the coroutine turns that little explosion sprite off in a second, and then sets the whole thing to active, or unactive. Over here we have the health script for the player, which is pretty much, it's just pretty much just the function right here is the main part that is just dealing damage, and then when health is less than 0, the lose screen sets active and we destroy that game object. I don't have lives set up at the moment, but I'd like to work on that at some point. Here we have the bullet for the player, which is pretty much just checks the tags, and if it's barrier, destroys it, enemy bullet destroys the other object, and then if it's enemy, it, calls the enemy script, calls that function right there, and then destroys itself. And then enemy bullet's the same way, just with its own level tags. Here we have the enemy counter, which is just an int that counts the amount of objects with the tag enemy on it. And then when that int gets down to 0, which would mean all the enemies are dead, the win screen is set to active. Here we have the enemy move right here, which is kind of interesting. So pretty much I just have a timer set up where this is constantly going, and it goes to the right. Then when we hit the first time to reach, it goes down. The next time to reach goes left. The next time to reach goes down. And then it loops back over to the beginning so that it can keep going in that movement. And then here I also have, this is just checking to make sure that once the enemies get too low, it'll call out that the player loses. And lastly, over here we have the bullet mover, which is just grabbing the rigid body and transform.up times speed. And for like the enemy bullets, I just have a negative speed in there. And that's pretty much everything for my two games, Space Invader and Tic Tac Toe. Both were created without a tutorial, and yeah, I think that's everything. Thank you for watching.